this leading reliability. This, that's nice. Wrong one. This leadership group has really allowed us to get back together and start talking about some of these concepts. And I found it really enjoyable. So he called me a couple times over the last couple of weeks with really interesting discussions about the topic that we're going to hear today. So I hope everybody can kind of take a little something from it. It's certainly, I think it's safe to say, Andy, that this presentation has been an eye opener for both of us as we kind of bounced it around. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I'm pretty excited about it. I know the Benz, you guys, you're thinking about your organization and where you go next. Jeff, same for you. This could be something that would kind of help, I think, quite a bit in kind of realigning where you're headed and how you're conveying that out to your organization. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Brian and Andy, but I just wanted to say thank you to Andy. I've enjoyed the conversation and preparing for this.
Great.
Yeah,
hey, Brian, I went to click share screen and it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So
wow.
did you click a button or something?
Yeah, so Brian, that's a common problem we have all the time. It's down in the menus at the bottom.
Oh, I think I just got it. Try it one more time.
Awesome.
There we go. There we go.
All right. Yeah. So, and again, I think I'm really excited about this topic. Andy, thanks for doing this. This is Leaders Fusion for March 2021. And I'm going to turn it over to Andy so we can just get this on.
Great. Great. So everybody see the big white screen that says Leaders Fusion?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
I do not know.
What about now?
Yeah, there it is.
There we go. Hey, I think technologically we figured it out. Right. Okay, great. So guys, everyone, as we go along here, let's just make it more of a conversation. Jump in anytime you want, argue with anything you like. The more the merrier. Let's just, make this a great conversation between interested folk, right? So I got to tell you, from our last presentation, I got to say that really made me think. The idea of speed and how do you get decisions made faster and how do you get the organization to operate more seamlessly and smoothly, that really got me thinking. And I'll be honest with you, I'll be totally honest with you. There's one of the reasons I called Sean is because how it got me thinking immediately after the presentation. I would say 4 weeks later, I'm not particularly proud of, and that'll make sense here in just a moment, right? So, I started asking myself, what kind of decisions do I want my team members making without me involved, right? I mean, that's the idea of speed, right? Is that folks below you are, making decisions, and as you move up the chain, there's fewer and fewer decisions to be made. And I'll be honest with you, my first reaction was, I don't want to make it any, right? Which I know is wrong, right? That's the type A in me coming out maybe too strong, right? And then I thought, well, okay, I mean, I don't mind them making decisions, but only the ones that aren't important, right? Which is an absolute mistake as well, right? So the other part of my brain went, now, Andy, that's not right? So I was stumped. I really was. And this is kind of one of my things, right? So I'm a little embarrassed to say that I was stumped, but it came to a really good spot. So I'm no longer embarrassed, right? So let's get into it. So I want you to look at these two types of situations, right? On the left, we've got this big pie chart, and you can see the big orange section represents unknowns, unknown variables, unknown things in the environment. And then we have a smaller section of blue that represents the known. All right, so in my mind, right, the military going to war, or a law enforcement agency going out to work, or people who work in an emergency room, this would be more like their scenario. Lots of unknowns, very little knowns. They got to make it work. And if we compared that then to the stuff on the right, you know, there's still some unknowns. There's always some, but there's a much bigger piece of pie that is known, right? So I would think like the manufacturing environment where, hey, we know we're going to make X pounds of this stuff every day for as many days as we can. You know, we know who works here. We know who our clients are. There's a whole bunch of knowns, very few unknowns, really. Outpatient services in the medical world, right? My wife's a physical therapist. She works in an outpatient clinic 3 days a week. On those days, she knows exactly who she's going to see. She knows exactly what their problems are, and she knows exactly what she can do to help them. Maybe a law office might describe the same scenario, right? Particular types of law. Hey, we specialize in this area of the law. We know the types of problems that people have that come in the door or call us, and we know what we can do for them, right? So my question to the group, right? Group discussion here real quick. If you were leading these situations, would you treat these situations the same?
So Andy, yes, in a lot of ways. In fact, okay, so you made me think of a couple other very instructive books. I brought up one in our last discussion about crucial conversations, but I also, this brings to mind a book that it will really make you think about processes and procedures called The E-Myth. Any of you ever read that one? The E-Myth. Okay, so I see you nodding there. You probably can see why I'm going here with this. In an emergency room, what you can control is processes that, you know, all right, for the most part, I can go, all right, when this comes in, I'm going to make sure I follow this path to start. You're going to run into some unknowns no matter which of these scenarios you put in place. The question is, how much can I almost automate or replicate so it's standardized enough?
That's a perfect segue to the next slide. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Any other thoughts before we leave this one?
Yeah, I think just on the surface, you know, what most people probably look at is, oh, there's so much unknown, I can't let go of control. But that's like, how can you control the emergency room? Or you're going to wait for the patient, you know, to die while you decide what to tell the doctor what to do. It's like, it doesn't work that way. It's totally non-intuitive.
At a glance, it feels like that, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. So great. So hold that thought, everybody. So if we think about the nature of the situation dictates the level of process sophistication, right? So sophistication here means complexity by design, right? So if we think about, you know, an unknown problem with an unknown solution, you're not allowed to have a lot of complexity by design going into that situation because the situation is too fluid. You know, you got unknown problems, unknown solutions. Vice versa, when you're, in contrast to that, when you have a known problem with a known solution, you can have a very, very high level of process sophistication, right? So, and then there's that stuff in the middle where we've got a known problem, unknown solution, unknown problem, known solution, somewhere in the middle, right? So we think about the degree of process sophistication. It's not about what's required to successfully deal with the situation. Rather, it's about what degree of sophistication we can preload the situation with to make it easier to be successful. So let me pause right there for comment or thoughts.
That's what I was getting at with the E-Myth, Andy.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. So at least David and I are on the same page so far. Nobody else is talking. So we got some smiles.
Andy,
yeah.
This is Ben. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
So I guess my question for you or for the group is, when we look at the known problem, known solution, are those the situations where you want to follow the E-myth to a letter, or where we want the most rules in place? Or are those the opportunities where we want the fewest amount of policy so that our folks can find the next best way?
Man,
I'm so cynical to like the rules that rain
Yeah.
down from corporate, you know?
yeah, that, and you should be, because there's a lot of them that maybe, you know, it's not a very proud moment some days, right? So hold that thought for a minute, Ben. Let's
Okay.
talk about this next slide, right? So we're gonna revisit this topic here in just a moment. Give me a couple slides to work it up, right? So let's do a review really quickly of standard work. And when we say standard work, we mean, you know, workflow processes and that kind of thing, right? So if you're not tuned into standard work or how that works, you will be here in about 5 minutes. So think about it like this. So standard work document is our workflow processes. It's the thing that we follow to do our job, right? So the most extreme version of this would be like the Toyota production system, where from the CEO to whatever title you want to put at the very bottom of the pyramid, everybody has a standard work document, right? The idea of the standard work document is it contains everything you need to be able to do your job, right? So people have a standard work document. Now, we'll cover the system tenets there on the right-hand side of the screen as we go down, right? So you can think of standard work as your workflow processes, right? By design, they should be handling 85 to 90% of the situations you encounter, right? There will be some immersion training where if you're new to the role or new to the company, somebody's going to say, hey, this is you, this is your job, here's your standard work document. We're going to task qualify you on all of the things that you're expected to do. And here's your book, here's your Bible, right? Now that represents your mental model, right? So you know, in the simplest world, you're kind of in this do loop forever, right? You're doing standard work, right? But we all know that we've only discussed 85 to 90% of the situations that you encounter. Sometimes you're going to run across an anomaly, right? And there's like this whole little loop we're about to talk about on how anomalies are supposed to be dealt with. Now, recognizing that these anomalies should only account for 10 to 15% of what we encounter in a highly sophisticated environment, right? Where known problem, no solution, manufacturing, that kind of thing, right? Now, when there's an anomaly, what happens is there's a Kaizen event, right? A group of people get together and go, hey, what was it you found again, Brian? Okay, let's think about what the best way to handle that situation is. And that team produces a single point lesson to deal with that problem, right? Now, let's look at tenets 4 and 5 over there, right? In this environment, the standard work environment, individuals find problems, teams solve problems. Now we're going to circle back to why number 5 is super important by the time this presentation's over. But it's important to note in this environment right here that individuals are not expected to solve problems in a vacuum. In fact, they go even a step further and say individuals are forbidden to solve problems in a vacuum, right? Must be a team. And if it's a cross-functional team, even better. Now, it doesn't end there, right? The single point lesson's created and it goes through a management of change process whereby a management of change committee approves it and then standard work is updated. Now, the cool thing about that is when standard work is updated, you know, we get that immersion training is revisited every 90 days to task qualify you on the changes to your standard work document over the last 90 days. Right? So that single point lesson is only designed to exist temporarily until the management of change process approves it and standard work has been updated. And everybody's been task qualified on the new standard work. And then the single point lesson is pulled down and thrown away. And it's just part of standard work from there on out, right? So the only thing I'll ever say is in this environment, in addition to technical accuracy of the single point lesson, the Management of Change Committee is also to investigate the source of the anomaly, right? They ask themselves questions like, why is this the first time we've heard about this? Why are we just now seeing this? Has something changed upstream and we weren't aware? Has that thing that changed upstream, is it permanent? Can we, is this like a permanent adjustment, or was this like a one-time thing, right? So what you're seeing is an environment where we want to keep the standard work and we want to continuously improve the standard work document to accurately account for all of the anomalies that we run across. So hopefully you can see where we're talking about a highly sophisticated system here, where when we're in these on the right-hand side of that complexity continuum that we showed a moment ago, that this is the way you would have to work to create, to keep that level of sophistication high, but also keep the efficiency high at the same time. All right, so let me pause right there, because I probably just said a lot for those who've never seen a standard work system explained. But what are your thoughts or reactions so far?
I like that there's training involved.
Yeah, training's super, super important here. And it's not a once and done thing either. It's a every 90 days or so, what has changed on your job, and what do we got to do to or task qualify everybody that's got that job title or does that job function with the things that have changed in the last 90 days.
Right. And maybe Sean weigh in on this. What's world class? Is it like 7%? Is that like 1 week out of the quarter?
Sean had to step away for a few minutes. So
7% what, Brian?
I think 7% of your time is world class for training. So if you can spend 1 week out of a quarter, like one 5-day week out of a quarter training, and that's like a great target to shoot for. So,
that's
going back to revisit is perfect.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal level of training for most organizations.
And
they can't get their head around that much training.
Andy, it's very interesting presentation. I have one question, and that is, if I got you correctly, you stated that when there is an unexpected problem that comes up, a team is expected to solve it, not individuals. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we're going to get into the why in that here in just a slide or two. Yeah, but that's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
But don't you think that sometimes certain individuals that are unusually familiar with their production line may be in a better position to solve a problem than teamwork? By the way, I'm all for teamwork. I think it's essential.
Right.
But I'm not sure that prohibiting an individual to solve a problem and propose it to the team is a bad thing. But
oh no, the person who found the problem is always a part of the group that solves it. They have to be, for all the points you just made. They have to be, right? Because they're the one closest to the problem. Now the problem is that workflow process is the only thing they're close to. So when we think about our cross-functional team who represent other areas of the business, and they go, well, that probably looks like the right answer to you, but
yes,
to me, it's not the right answer because I'm looking through these glasses and you're looking through your glasses, and through my glasses, your solution creates two other problems that you'd never even know about because they're upstream or downstream of you, right? So that's why the team one of the reasons why the team has to be the one to come up with a solution so that we don't create other problems.
So
Andy, I'm sorry.
I was going to say there's two things that have been brought up here that I need to comment on. The first thing is Kaizen was developed actually on the Toyota manufacturing line, and anybody could pull the assembly line cord to stop it when they saw an abnormality.
Right.
Okay. And then it went through what you're describing here, Andy, where, all right, I've noticed the abnormality. I don't want that quality defect take it through and let's see what we can do. In fact, the line would not start again until they had a solution.
Yeah.
Okay, so this loop can happen very quickly. On the other hand, and I want to be clear about this, what we're talking about is a process that might not be able to happen that quickly if it's not a strict manufacturing setting. And what's your name, sir? I don't know. I know Sean's name. What's your name? Is it Israel? But
Yes, my name is Israel Stoll.
there's the contrast to this, and maybe it's not so much of a contrast, is the 3M model. And what 3M did, they became the most innovative company in the world. And what they did was they gave their people, in fact, they required their people to set aside a day, I can't remember if it was a week or a month, where all they did was work on ideas that were innovative to improve things
Absolutely.
or brand new ideas.
Yeah.
David, in some quarters in industry, it's called skunk walk. And really innovative companies encourage it religiously, because this skunk walk is part of the trial and error process that ought to be taking place in any setup. But Andy, I want to come back to what you just have stated, which is very interesting. And that is when when there's a problem, let's say in an assembly line, and the individual has to be part of a team and there's a committee and so on, that may end up as an exercise of reaching a compromise, okay? It may be political compromise, may be technical compromise, but it's a compromise, but that may not necessarily promptly solve the problem that was detected in the line. So it's kind of a balancing act, you know, delegating like Kaizen, you know, giving the responsibility, hey, to stop the line, raise a flag, whatever, and try to solve it promptly versus coming up with a committee work, multidisciplinary, to come up with a solution. So I think that there should be a sweet spot someplace. Can you address that?
Oh yeah, we're actually coming to that. So
Okay.
you guys are nailing it. You're pre-shadowing almost every point we're making here. So it's perfect, right? So let's pause on that as we move through here.
Brian paid me to say that.
Gotcha. Okay, so if we have this model or some version of this model in our mind, right, as you know, dealing with unknown problems and dealing with known problems efficiently and unknown problems where they don't create other problems, then let's think about this. Our big question was, what do I want, you know, what kind of decisions do I want team members below me in the organization making without me involved, right? So let's not forget our question. So we ask ourselves then, what informs the manner and style of our workflow processes? We can ask ourselves, what informs the manner and style of our Kaizen efforts? Right? So I want you to think about this. Think about something that we hear a lot, but everybody throws around without, you know, a lot of people throw around without a deep understanding. And that's our core values. So when I say core values, what am I talking about?
Yeah, so it's driving your culture and your decision-making processes.
There you go. Exactly it. Thank you, Brian. Right. So our core values help us articulate our identity to our team members and to outsiders. Our core values inform what we work on and how we work on it. Right. So think about it like this. All business decisions should embody all core values simultaneously, right? So therein lies the answer to the big question. As long as team members below me in the organization, as long as their decisions truly embody all of the core values that we've established to, you know, about our organization, I would feel 100% confident of them, you know, making those decisions without me involved, right? So we're going to connect core values to everything else here in just a moment. But to the point we've been making about the degree of workflow processes versus the degree of process sophistication, I said we'd revisit this continuum, and here it is. So in an unknown problem, unknown solution kind of scenario, we wouldn't have a whole lot of, we wouldn't put a whole lot of reliance on workflow processes, because it's not logical to have workflow processes when you have an unknown problem and an unknown solution. We'd put a lot heavier influence on our core values, right? But it's never zero for workflow processes. We're going to have a general layout. But as we work toward the right, we work into those higher level sophistication situations, known problems, known solutions, where efficiency is the call of the day. Then we're going to put a much heavier reliance on workflow processes, recognizing that they already reflect the core values, but we wouldn't be so reliant on creativity using the core values in those scenarios, just because of how highly structured those environments are, right? So hopefully what you're seeing is, a tip of the hat to both workflow processes and core values, such that we understand when we rely on one more heavily than the other.
Hey, Andy, I had a question, because I'm kind of, I'm kind of watching this with an eye on, how this is applied to, say, an organization in its infancy, so as you build an organization. So this would seem to imply to me that a new organization that doesn't really have a structure built or anything, the core values would be some of the first things that you would need to develop for that organization.
You guys are batting 1,000 on previewing the next slide. That's exactly right, Jeff. That's
okay.
Exactly
Okay.
Right.
I'll take this off then. I'll let
No.
you keep going.
I love it, man. I love it, because that tells me that at least I've built the slides in the right order, right? The way you guys are thinking of it, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I'll let you get to it, and then I'll just ask more questions along the way.
Gotcha. So let's think about elements of a strategy, right? So people think about strategy, and we throw the term around a lot, and a lot of people severely misuse strategy. But strategy is everything that's about to appear on the slide, right? So Jeff, to your point, right? We begin with our core values. Who are we? Why is this group of people working together, right? What's important to us as a group, and why do we happen to be liking working with each other, right? So our core values, that's our identity. Okay. Now from the core values, we start developing a vision, right? So our core values inform our vision, and of course the market informs our vision as well, right? We really like building, iPhones, right? Or telephones, cellular phones, right? The market will buy a lot of cell phones. This might be a perfect place for us to build cell phones, right? Because we know we like doing it, and we know there's a market for it. So perfect. So then that vision statement, that reflects our aspirations, right? What are we wanting to do here, right? So you take that core values, those core values and that vision, and then you say, okay, the next thing is the mission, right? The mission provides the direction. What kind of phones are we going to build? How many, not necessarily how many, but what kind, and so on and so forth, right? So the mission statement is a more refined version of the vision, right? So that mission statement then leads to this group of what we call guiding principles, right? So the guiding principles are nothing more than the core values, an expansion of the core values, now that the vision statement, the mission statement have been written. So we write these guiding principles. We said, okay, now that you've read the vision statement, the mission statement, if you're wondering how those core values apply, let me be more detailed. Let me expand on those in more like sentence form so that you can understand, right? So those guiding principles, then that provides obviously guidance. It's in the word, right? We still have, the market is changing around us. So our business needs change. So that vision, the core values, the vision, the mission, the guiding principles, the demand of the market comes together to create these things that are temporal, these things that change from year to year, right? Our objectives change from year to year. Our goals change from year to year. The timelines that we operate within change from year to year, right? The market is forcing us to adapt, but we're still trying to stay true to our identity, our aspirations, our direction, and the guidance that we're using to, kind of aim the arrow, if you will, right? Now, those objectives, goals, and timelines give way to our processes, which is the methods that we're going to use to accomplish these things. And then finally, plans, tasks, and techniques, which of course is the execution. Now, we've got all these elements of a strategy laid out. We have to have some feedback mechanisms, right? So think about the key performance indicators we use to measure our business. Now, I can have KPIs and objectives and goals and timelines and processes, plans, tasks, techniques. I can have KPIs at all of those different levels. It doesn't matter where, you can put them in there wherever it makes sense. But here's the problem, right? Here's where a lot of people mess up. They look at those KPIs and they say, that's how we're going to run our business. But when you link them back in a quality loop, if you will, and you say, well, how do those guiding principles match up to, how do those KPIs match up to our guiding principles? And how do those KPIs match up to our core values? A lot of organizations, you'll see a giant disconnect right there. All right, so let me pause. I know I just said a whole lot in like 2 minutes. So
Andy, I have a question for you.
yeah.
So you started with the core values and you end up at the plan, tasks, and techniques.
Mhm.
And then you're trying to implement the loop. That makes perfect sense. My question for you is, where exactly do you fit in practice of creativity and innovation?
I'm sorry, where exactly do I fit in what?
The practice of creativity and innovation.
Oh,
and
yeah, got it. Yeah, no problem. So
Okay.
if we go back then, just really quickly, let's go back to the previous slide, right? I'm sorry, let's go back there. The best explanation of this I heard one day by Dr. Jeffrey Liker, the author of The Toyota Way. I happened to be at a conference where he was speaking, and as I entered the room, he was talking about this very process plus your question. He said, what he learned about Toyota in his years with them and studying them, he goes, what Toyota says out of one side of their mouth is, we value standard work's a condition of employment. He said, out of the other side of their mouth, they say we value innovation and we want everybody to be constantly coming up with good ideas. He said, to the people who are new to this environment, those feel contradictory. And this is where he caught my attention, because I was sitting there going, those are contradictory. You can't have those at the same time. What he said changed a big chunk of the way I think about this. He said, here's what Toyota knows. He goes, when they stop pushing standard work, the number of innovative ideas come down. He goes, when they refresh their charge to remind everybody of standard work, and they refresh their, keeping everybody focused on using standard work, the number of innovative ideas go up. He goes, imagine this scenario. And this is what caught my attention, because I'm a maintenance guy from way back. He goes, 2 mechanics rebuilding a pump, not following a standard work document. He said they have to use all of their creative capacity to figure it out. Memory, trial and error, experimentation, pausing, phoning a friend, grabbing other people, so on and so forth. He goes, they eventually get it done. They may have to rework it a time or two, but they eventually get it done. He said it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of their brain power to do it. He said there was no leftover brain power to see the innovation, the quicker, faster, safer, easier, cheaper, better way for next time. He said, now flip that. He said 2 mechanics working on rebuilding a pump, following a detailed standard work document. He goes, very easy to do. Get it right the first time. All they have to do is read and know their basic skills, and they can do it. He said, requires very little brain power to follow a standard work document. He said, there's a big chunk of leftover brain, remaining brain, to see the cheaper, faster, better, safer, easier way for next time. He said, so what Toyota says is that standard work is the springboard from which innovators leap. I'll never forget that statement as long as I live. I loved the way he described that. It made perfect sense to me. I know in my own world, I do a lot of house projects. I know in my own world, the moment I let my shop get dirty is the moment I get frustrated. It's the moment that I slow down, become less efficient, start making more mistakes, get tired more easily. The cleaner I keep things and the closer I follow the instructions of whatever it is I'm building or the plan that I've devised to build it, the easier the whole thing is for me. I mean, it's a small example of what Dr. Leiker was talking about when he said that. And it just changed the way I think about workflow processes, about work procedures and everything, right? So standard work's the springboard from which innovators leap. Now, the discipline required for that environment is this. The innovation has got to be for next time, not for this time. This time you follow standard work. If you've got an idea, submit it through management of change, let a cross-functional team weigh in on it, judge it, determine if it is exactly as good an idea as you thought it was, relative to all the other functions that it will affect. And if in fact that is a better idea for all parties concerned, not just you, then we'll update standard work. And the next time you do this job, you'll have the advantage of that. He said that is the number one discipline problem they have, is people coming up with a new idea and implementing it right there on the fly. He said then it just reinforces, or rather reintroduces all of the inefficiencies and all of the, well, I thought it was a good idea, come to find out I didn't know these other two parameters, and they come back to bite me, right? So that's how I would answer that question.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, it's funny. That's funny you say that, because the David Allen outlines that in Getting Things Done, where if you have an organizational method for keeping track of projects, tasks, calendars, all sorts of other things, it frees up your brain to start thinking beyond the 5 minutes in the firefighting. You can start thinking months, weeks, and years into the future. And it's an incredible experience. So as an organization, this is right on. I'm 100% with this.
Yeah, nice. So everybody's seen these elements of strategy before. Jeff, did this answer your question about core values being first?
Yeah, for sure. The whole, that and more, integration of KPIs, all that kind of stuff, how to basically build it out.
Perfect. Okay, so here's the biggest point I wanted to make, guys. So we're sitting here with some set of core values that, the organization has espoused, right, to ourselves, to their team members, and to the rest of the world, right? Now, those core values, somewhere in your organization, you should have a set of guiding principles, right? And you should be able to very cleanly, very easily map those guiding principles back to the core values. Because remember, the guiding principles are nothing but an expansion of the core values, right? So when I say core value of proactiveness, you go, all right, I know the word, but how in the world does that apply to me? Well, you may find that 2 or 3 of the guiding principles, specifically address proactiveness, but they address it in sentence form, and it makes it easier for you to go, oh, okay, I see what you mean, and I see how that applies to my job, right? Now, further down the line, we've got the set of KPIs that we're using to manage the business, whatever they may be, right? What I'm contending here is that if you cannot link those KPIs back to those core values through those guiding principles, what have you told the organization? If you not link them back.
That you just don't care.
That's certainly one way. Yeah, that's certainly one message.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah. So think about it, guys. What kind of message does it send to the organization when the KPIs we use to run the business are not linked to our espoused core values, or vice versa, however you want to think of it, right? How do we fix it? You know, how well aligned are your KPIs to your core values, right? I mean, those core values are there for a reason. They establish the groundwork on which all of our strategy is based. Well, that and market demands, you know, are those two are foundational elements to why we exist as an organization, why we work the way we work, what we work on, when we work on it, blah, 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 all those other things, right? So you can totally see, and I mean, as I think back on organizations that I've worked for, and I say, okay, I see what you tell the company, tell the world we are, but then I see the KPIs that you make decisions based on, and I see this giant disconnect. So it becomes a function of leadership integrity, really, right? Saying one thing and doing another, versus having a well-aligned strategy where top to bottom, inside and out, things line up. They tick and tie, as other people say. They match, right? So if I knew that my KPIs were well aligned with my core values, and I knew that all of the team members that I work with really embodied those core values in the decisions that they made, I would be very comfortable with people making decisions when I'm not in the room. However, if the situation were reversed and I said, man, we never talk about core values, and even when we go look them up, they're not linked in any way to the 4 or 5 KPIs that we really use to run this business, it scares the hell out of me to think that others would be making decisions for my group when I'm not in the room. Right? So the paradigm shifting moment that Sean referenced when we started the call 45 minutes ago, for me, this was it right here. So questions, comments? I'd love to hear what you guys think about what we're talking about here.
Andy, it's a funny story real quick. I got hired into big oil back in 2014, and that brief I got on the way in was, you know, we pride ourselves on innovation, technology, having the latest and greatest, right?
Yeah.
So 2 years later, I'm giving that same, you know, going through the binder with a new employee, and I had to stop, and I was like, what? I'm like, we got to fight somebody to buy something new. We buy parts off of eBay. The whole place is falling apart. There's billions of dollars, but nobody will spend a dime on any capital improvements. It's like, you guys are full of crap.
There you go.
So bad, so bad.
Say one thing and do another. Basic lack of integrity, right? So
Yeah.
When you have that situation, it's no wonder that managers want to micromanage, because, and I'm not saying that your managers wanted to micromanage, it just, we see this a lot, where you're like, why are they micromanaging? Well, I'll tell you why. Is they have no idea what situation's coming next, and they have no idea how their team's going to deal with it. And if one of those was a known, instead of both of them being unknowns, you'd find a totally different kind of leader, right? Questions, comments?
I think Ben left you a real nice one in the chat.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. What did it say? What, I click chat?
He said you were a solidly mediocre presenter, and he was just happy he was here to see it.
Yeah, that feels about right. That feels about right.
I believe it says you're a master educator and storyteller. Insights, takeaways. It's all about core values. They are our North Star. Got to run. See you next time.
I love core values as the North Star. That's totally it right there. That's totally it. So I won't say the name of the company, right? But in one of Sean and I's conversation earlier last week, I did pull up a company that one of their employees is actually on this call right now. And I did look up their core values. And Sean and I were looking at their core values, and I'm like, Sean, even if I made a decision that embodied those 4 or 5 core values, I could still make a series of bad business decisions that would run the company directly into the ground. And Sean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe you wholeheartedly agreed with me, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was at a loss because
Can't hear you, muffled.
it definitely didn't it didn't match up with what we were talking about. That's for sure.
Isn't that crazy, right? So that just for me, that, you know, I know that's one data point and we're not supposed to make decisions based on one data point, but it felt like it was a good one. So I could say, all right, that one data point at least reinforced this idea that they've got a set of KPIs that they run their business with that are not at all linked to their core values. And that makes it very difficult to expand your reach, your influence within an organization when there's no model for you to teach those below you. Hey, when you run across decisions, and you will, this is how I want you thinking. And if you're thinking this way, then me and you are aligned, and I got your back, and you know, you make those decisions and we'll go with it, right?
But I think that's a great point, Andy, and I was kind of waiting for you to make that point because it changes the whole tone of the coaching situation.
Okay, keep going.
Well, and what I mean is you've now got this set of guiding principles that you can truly say, when you made that decision, did it go against any of these guiding principles, or said in a more positive way, of course, you know, where did your decision support these guiding principles as we reviewed them, right? And it helps you to be able to coach those individuals in a situation that hopefully is not as confrontational, but very clear, because you got those guiding principles that they can go back and look at.
Yeah. So if we tie that idea or these core values conversations back to an even previous Leaders Fusion presentation, the core values are, if you want to think about them like this, if you think about a commander's intent statement, is nothing but a reminder of the core values with situational context, right? We're about to head into a particular situation, guys. I want to remind you of what our core values are and how we want them to be shown under these particular circumstances, under this situation, right? That's all a commander's intent statement is. It's a highly context specific reminder of what the core values are, right? So, I mean, these presentations all, you know, tend to connect together in some way or another, don't they? Okay, Brian, that's all I got, man.
Hey, can you hear us?
Yeah.
We can now. Go ahead.
Okay, cool.
Hi, Andy. Thank you so much. It's an excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate it. I had one question, and that is, you were talking about the situation of.
Oh, you're muffled,
Right.
Israel. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
There we go.
You were talking about trying to continue to adhere to the core value in different situations.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that you always have the luxury to anticipate all the situations that you may get into. And there may be some situations where it's going to be much more challenging to completely adhere to the core value. And I think, you know, your subordinates or the people that report to you, to whom you may want to delegate some decisions, they have to be taught what those possible situations are and what are the parameters for them.
Totally agree. Totally agree. No, the core values are, it's a bit like other things in life, right? We get some situations are very easy to represent all the core values in the solution or the decision that you make. And some of them can be quite challenging, very challenging, in fact, especially when you don't want to turn loose of your current paradigms. Let me give you one example, right? So I work for a company called DuPont Sustainable Solutions. we, as of a year and a half ago, we were a part of DuPont, and a year and a half ago that we split away from DuPont. Now, for those of you who know about the safety world, DuPont is legendary in the safety world. And in the early 90s, they saw a significant step change in their safety performance, and they did it with two statements. Statement number one, we're going to do it the safe way every time, no exceptions. Statement number two, you cannot blame safety for missing a business goal. Right? So what that forced a lot of people in DuPont to do at that time was to give up a lot of their current mental paradigms, because they had convinced themselves they worked in this lane, right? Now that lane had, in this particular case, safety challenges. And the company said, not going to tolerate safety problems anymore. So they're like, but I can't stay in this lane and do it the way you want to do it. And DuPont's like, yeah, I get it. Change lanes. Right? So a lot of times, when people go, well, I can't find the solution to satisfy all 5 core values simultaneously. And somebody might go, I think maybe you got to turn loose of some mental paradigms, because it's not like, the organization is asking for magic, right? So I'm not saying, Israel, that that's the case for you. I'm just saying that has been the case for me, for sure. And I've seen it be the case for lots of people, where you go, oh, wow, this is one of those moments where I have to change what I think. I have to change the way I deal with situations. I got to change the way I've been doing things. And
Sure.
now we could spend the next 2 days talking about subject of psychological safety and the right environment it would take to get you to be able to experiment and fail and experiment and finally figure it out and blah, 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 right? All that stuff, right? But which is also required when I put you in a situation where I'm challenging your current mental paradigms. But
Sure.
we don't have time to get into all that.
Yeah, I just want to leave you with an analog that I'm using, situation like this. And that is, Andy, imagine that you are driving, okay? And for some reason you get off the shoulder of the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get off the shoulder of the road, and it's quite a steep shoulder. Now you're coasting at 65 or 70 miles per hour. What do? Do you try to correct, and get back into the road at 70 miles per hour? You may kill yourself and others, or you continue to coast until you gradually stop, and then you can do it safely. And that's kind of analogous in my mind to some situations in production, okay? And then your people have to make some difficult decisions. Do they really have to adhere 100% to the core values, or that they are compelled to, let's say, improvise and come up with some quick solution, even though it's not perfectly in line with the script? That's the situation I'm alluding to.
Yeah, so the only comment I'd make on that is, why'd we have to get off on the shoulder to begin with?
There are different reasons.
There are different reasons, and I can speak to that one because I had to get off the shoulder and ended up in a tree because a semi lost its rear wheels. And
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to do with him losing his rear wheels.
And that was a situation that came up unpredictably.
Right. No. Hey, it happens, right? But the only thing, the closing comment for me would be, if the situation up until that point had been exhaustive, and it was truly something we couldn't foresee, then we got a lot of work to do on why we couldn't foresee it, right? Because
But I think the speaker that you asked that wrote the book about Toyota, he hit it on the head. He hit the nail on the head. And that is, he told you that Toyota is speaking with both sides of their mouth. Okay, on one hand, they have this rigid value system. On the other hand, they violate it. And I think that's reality.
no, he didn't say they violated at all. No, he didn't.
Well,
That's not what he said. What he said was,
So what did they say then? They speak with both sides of their mouths.
he said to the neophyte, to the person who was new to the Toyota production system, it appeared that they were speaking out of both sides of their mouth, when in fact they were not at all.
Okay.
And you
Yeah.
said that the reason they were is because you can't.
Can't hear you. You're muffled. You're muffled.
It's a very directional microphone. We're just figuring this out. So I think what you're saying is that at the end of the day, the reason it's not talking out of both sides is because you can't make a change on the fly. You can make a suggestion on the fly, and that suggestion then gets a review and approval.
There you go. The innovative idea is not for this time. It's for next time.
Yeah.
And I wrote down in my notes for next time: follow, suggest, review, and then update. And so that was my way of kind of taking that away.
It kind of sounds like also that the ability to stick with the core values is partially going to depend on how well you did at creating the core values to begin with.
There you go.
So
There you
you got to spend some time putting them together and make sure that it's the right foundation rather than a shoddy.
Exactly right. And a lot of organizations wind up revisiting their core values after they've lived with them for a little bit, going, is this real? Did we get it right? Or did we like, nope, we missed this, missed that. We're like, we got to update.
And,
right?
Yeah.
and if your core values were developed based on an acronym where you were trying to spell a word, that may be an indication of maybe some issues and some missed pieces. I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm just kind of mentioning what
But if
could
it
happen.
sounds cool, it's got to work. You can't have a good message that doesn't sound cool. It just doesn't come across right.
You're speaking like a marketing guy, Brian. I don't know.
Right.
I will say
Hey.
one thing before we wrap up today. This psychological safety topic has come up a couple of times recently for me. I would love if somebody feels like tackling that or would be comfortable tackling that. I would love to talk about psychological safety and how we create that in our organizations.
Well, I'm happy to cover it, but not next time, right? You guys have heard enough of me for 30 days, right? So
Yeah, we're gonna take our 30-day Andy break and
30-day any rate, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
well, I mean they will. I'll probably talk to you tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, well,
Hey, Andy,
so-
are you planning on sharing the slides from today?
absolutely. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and since I recorded this, I'll get the link to it posted out there somewhere soon as it's all done. And on that note, also with our 30-day Andy break next month, I believe it's the 26th of April, is Israel on creativity. So we're going to get our first installment on creativity in about 30 days. It should be exciting. I've had some good conversations over the fence with them, and I think it's a real valuable topic for what we're all diving into here. So excited to hear that one. So, and after that, if anybody else out there is looking to present another topic, just shoot me a message. We'll stick with this longer format for a little while and see how it goes. So.
Well,
if
I
you wanna
really
take-
like
take
how the
over.
presentations are dovetailing together, Brian. I think that's one of the big takeaways from my perspective. So I think Israel will dovetail right into these discussions. I have a feeling.
So at some point I'll interject and tell you where I came up with the name for Leaders Fusion too, because then it'll all go, there it is.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Andy.
everybody.
And guys, if you
Thanks,
want a
Andy.
really good study on what he's talked about, study the Credo by Johnson & Johnson, written a very long time ago. They reference it all the time as what they go back to as their core. But anyway, just a
Awesome.
thought.
All right. We'll see you guys again soon.
Sounds great.